Welcome to Chewing the Fat, a WorkForge podcast, your source for bite-sized conversations about the world of food manufacturing staffing, retention, onboarding, training, and career development, featuring operators, industry leaders, and more.
Welcome and thank you for joining us for this episode of WorkForge's podcast, Chewing the Fat. I'm Katie Allen, Chief Marketing Officer at WorkForge. Today our topic is a recipe for DEI success in food manufacturing, and we're thrilled to have Dr. Ron Williams joining us as our guest. Dr. Williams is an Associate Professor of Management at Coppin State University and the Founding Director of the Center for Strategic Entrepreneurship. He's played a crucial role in research studies on manufacturing workforce development. His academic journey includes a PhD in Management and Organization from George Washington, a master's degree in Human Resource Development from Johns Hopkins University, and a bachelor's degree with majors in Psychology, Social Science, and Education from the University of Tampa. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Williams, that's a lot. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be with you.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So you had something really interesting in your bio that I wanted to ask you about, if you could tell us a little bit more. In 2017, you introduced the term entrepreneurship. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, entrepreneurship. There was so much conversation about entrepreneurship that we wanted to put a slightly different twist on it based on some of our observations. We're located in West Baltimore, Maryland, in an urban area. And so we said that we would develop a framework that looked at the socioeconomic trajectory of a particular population, also looking at the kind of training that they are provided, and education that they are provided for entrepreneurship and business development, everything from opportunity analysis to exit, and also examine what are we doing to provide them space for what we call playful ingenuity, which is just space to be creative, to experiment, to explore, and come up with innovative and new ideas. So we use that to do analysis and some program development, making sure that we include all of those components in our evaluation.
I love that. A space to be creative. That's
yes.
Awesome. That's great.
Yes.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. So as we look to dive in, last week we did a podcast on the baby boomer generation hitting retirement and the impact of that and what that is doing to manufacturing plants, specifically in food manufacturing. So do you have a perspective in that area? How is this going to impact things like knowledge transfer and hiring and training in our manufacturing plants?
Well, I think it's going to have an impact on all of those. And as a member of that demographic, it's living. I'm living it as I study and speak about it. So, baby boomers, in our journey, we have experiences, sociological experiences, but also economic experiences that define who we are and what we bring to the table now. And of course, that's influencing the food manufacturing sector and how goods and services are provided. As workforce members, many of us are reaching the retirement age, which means that there is going to be a huge knowledge exit and the necessity for a knowledge transfer. And how that happens from one generation to another is we must be very intentional about how that happens, because we know that the generations are different. Baby boomers and Gen Xers and Gen Z and millennials all bring a certain perspective. So for organizations and manufacturing firms to be as productive as possible, they have to give some thought to how that is going to happen, to make sure that it does happen, and it happens in a way that it positions the generations that will be assuming leadership and moving into certain spaces, that they are as prepared as possible. Also, in terms of just the demand itself, baby boomers, many of us are active and still able and desire to do things. So, and I'll say health conscious. We bring a certain health consciousness to the table that is going to have an impact on food demand. And paying attention to that from a manufacturing perspective. What is that value pool that baby boomers will be looking for, and that manufacturing firms should respond to make sure that the profits are continuing to grow, and that they are providing what the consumers are actually looking for and demanding.
Yeah, I love that word you used, intentional. And it really is. It's something that they need to be thinking about now, because it's starting to impact them now, but it's going to get even more so of an importance over the next 3 to 5 years. So I love the intentionality approach to that. So maybe thinking about that, then what types of strategies can these manufacturers put into place to help them deal with this?
Well, I am, of course, being a higher ed person, I'm all about learning and teaching and the educational and training systems that are in place, because regardless of which aspect of it we're considering, it requires that all stakeholders and all participants be as competent learners as they can possibly be. One of the things that's happening now, also because of technology in manufacturing and all other sectors, things are changing so rapidly, and it is accelerating. Change is accelerating. It's not slowing down. And you have the infusion of things like artificial intelligence that are now, at our fingertips, and are impacting the way we produce goods and we provide services. So learning is tremendously important. As a manufacturer, I would ask myself continuously, are my learning systems accomplishing what is required of us to be competitive in the market? If there's going to be a huge exit of baby boomers, a particular demographic, what are my learning systems that are going to prepare those who are going to then pick up the mantle? If I'm going to respond in a very agile way to consumer demand, how am I going to be plugged in so that we have the information that is necessary to always do the strategic planning, always do the assessment, always know the outcomes that we're looking for? So those are learning functions that we really have to pay attention to now.
Yep, that's great. And speaking of DEI, kind of what we're here to talk about today, that's a large component of this learning, right? So how can these manufacturers incorporate DEI, whether it's into their leadership development or manager, supervisor development, to create this inclusive experience so that their employees can learn?
Yes. When it comes to DEI, it's always framing the conversation, because DEI, what the acronym stands for, is diversity. And there are differences of all kinds in any workplace. And regardless of what characterizes those differences, there are gender differences, there are age differences, there are ability differences. But however those differences show up in your particular workplace, the learning component is learning how to be productive with whatever team you have, whatever differences exist on that team. How are we most productive? That requires an efficient learning process, whether it is cultural competencies or cultural sensitivity. That's a learning process, because I'm learning about differences that exist in my group, on my team, in my organization. And they're going to be different from firm to firm, from organization to organization. That's why it's important for each organization to customize its approach. You're trying to do the same thing, but it's going to be different everywhere. You have to be inclusive, because we need the workforce. There are so many workforce gaps that we cannot afford to be exclusive. We really need all hands on deck, everybody around the table, and making valuable contributions. So in the sense of being inclusive in terms of who's at the table, what are they contributing, are there pathways so that they're their contributions can be amplified, or as they move into leadership, how do we do that? Making sure that those systems are efficient and that they're learning. And of course, from an equity standpoint, everybody does not start from the same place. And whatever it is that causes us to start or come to a work environment with a different learning ability, with a different background, with a different experience, whatever that is, we need to make sure that there is at least there are systems that bring us to a place where we have an equitable beginning and all have sort of a good shot at making a valuable contribution. If those systems are in place and we're learning how to do that better, but continuously learning how to do it better, we'll never be 100%, we'll never be perfect, but I think that there are productivity measures that we can use to see how improving in those areas will affect the bottom line and help us to be more productive.
Yeah, I love that. Productivity, but also, the next question I was going to ask you is going to be just about retention. It's also hard to keep people, right? But people are going to stay in an environment where they feel that they are treated equitably, where they are respected, where they see a career path for themselves. And so are there any other strategies or ways that you think that these programs can help retain employees in addition to what you just said?
Yes. Well, it's a huge, retention issue because people are making different decisions now. And it's been a trend that's been coming for the past decade or 15 years or so. But COVID sort of pushed us off the cliff. And those who could make decisions or were just ready to make decisions about how they engage with organizations, and the fact that people have options now, in some cases because of entrepreneurship. Many people have what they call a side hustle of some kind, multiple streams of income. So people are really making different decisions. Employers have to be conscious of that, provide space for that. You're not always able to be flexible in the way we provide work options for people. Some positions will enable people to work from home. Some positions will not enable people to work from home. But just being conscious of that and realizing that providing flexibility, providing opportunity for employees, clear pathways to advancement. It's not always about advancing, administratively through that track. Sometimes it's the technical track. People are looking for ways to continuously, I think, acquire skills, be able to make a greater contribution. It gives them a greater sense of fulfillment personally. And when you see that, they stick around.
And that's something that we're hearing a lot too, obviously from our existing clients, but prospects is, especially in food manufacturing, you're bringing in a diverse set of employees that oftentimes speak multiple and different languages, right? And so from a training perspective and learning and development, how do we enable and empower all of those employees to learn in their language of choice, right? Through visual learning, and that's something that we at WorkForge here can do is translate our training into multiple languages, and so everybody has the same opportunity to grow and learn in their career.
Yes, no, that's tremendously important, and it's going to again become increasingly a reality that we have to address. I've been in this long enough to remember when everybody was talking about the globalization and the coming globalization, and how are we going to address it? Well, guess what? It's here. It is really here, and we have to live with it and address it in a way that helps us continue to grow.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. So what are some practical tips that you might have for aligning your workforce development with DEI initiatives? So whether it's retaining a diverse talent pool, kind of recruiting that younger generation of workers, creating equitable opportunities for growth and advancement, what are some pieces of advice that you might give?
Mhm. Well, the general piece of advice that I like to offer is a process of continuous assessment.
Mhm.
Whatever that is, what is the data saying to us when it comes to retention, when it comes to climate surveys, when it comes to all of those things that sort of de- define employee engagement and help us to be better at that. Um, if we are doing the continuous assessment, are we utilizing the data to come up with innovative programming? It's not necessarily necessary that we always do what we've done before, but sometimes we need to do some things that we haven't done before in order to really make a difference and to and if we're doing the continuous assessment, we know in a very short order whether it's working or not, or whether we're moving in the right direction. But as long as we have a system of continuous assessment and feedback, and being able to bring new strategies into our efforts and do that continuously, I think that the organizations or the firms will wind up in a good place. But it's just a matter of making sure that those systems are working all the time. Sometimes we trick ourselves into thinking that we get to a certain place where we can kind of ride the wave for a while or rest when it comes to some of these issues, whether it be DEI or inclusiveness or whatever the case may be. But we just never get to a place because it's really the relational competencies and the relational intelligence and help providing a space where people can work together well and be productive that is going to help us move forward and be competitive.
Yeah, I love that. So then maybe last question, what challenges do you foresee for some of these organizations in implementing DEI practices?
Um, I think some of the challenges are challenges that sort of have always existed, but because of the pace of change now and the evolution of technology and all of that, they're the same human issues that have existed. But when you factor in artificial intelligence, when you factor in globalization, when you factor in things like the 24-hour news cycle, all of the things that that accelerate the pace of everything, um, that becomes the challenge. How do we keep up with the influx, the overwhelming amount of information, the adjustments that we have to make quickly, and it's just a matter of keeping pace. That is, I believe, the biggest challenge for most organizations. But again, if you work continuously on your assessment infrastructure, then you'll have the information that you need. Of course, there are changes, globally. I recently, I think in the blog post that I did for you recently, I talked about the growth in food exports in that are happening. That's growing, and part of that is because of demographic shifts like the urbanization of the global population, people moving in. So you have just more consumption of prepared foods and that kind of demand. But those shifts will happen. But how we work together in a productive environment, that becomes the greatest challenge. We just have to continuously work on that.
Yeah, I love that. And setting the right example and showing what can be. I think in our prep call, you mentioned the statement, "I can be what I can see,"
Oh,
which
yes.
I really loved and thought that was very poignant. But if you want to maybe talk a little bit more about the background of that statement.
Yeah, the background of that statement is grounded in social emotional learning as an educational theory, and that is mentoring and how people are inspired by seeing people or images that are relevant to them. that just engender that immediate sense of trust and belongingness, and building an organizational community around that. Because in the organizations and the firms, that's really what we want, a sense of community, which is acceptance and affiliation, and where we all can be connected. So doing that in a very intentional way, making sure that people are seeing themselves in the environment, it's helpful. And I used it from a learning context by saying that we all remember our favorite teacher, and the impact that that favorite teacher had on that. That was a relational. Of course, they really helped to accelerate our learning, but the way they did it was because of the relationship, and it was a way that they related to us. So when you have people or images or whatever the case may be that people feel are relatable, it helps to create an environment where they learn better.
I love that. And shout out to Mrs. Scholar, my ninth grade English teacher.
We all had that special teacher.
Yes.
And we remember them because of the way they made us feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. Williams. That was outstanding. I really enjoy talking with you, and I know everybody is going to just absolutely love this episode of the podcast. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoy doing these, and I thank WorkForge for providing the opportunity.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. If you have any guests or proposed topics you would like to send us, please send those to chewingthefat@workforge.com. And we look forward to seeing you at the next episode. Until then, keep forging ahead. Thank you.
Thank you for joining this episode of Chewing the Fat, a WorkForge podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Visit workforge.com to learn more and sign up for more food manufacturing resources at workforge.com/blog.